Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis. And today we're going to be looking at multiple paths for each candidate to 270 electoral college votes. Make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so, looking at the map, guys, we see, according to my simulation model, pretty much Donald Trump's floor is about 235 electoral votes, which is his floor from the last election. So he's going into this with Iowa, Ohio, Florida, Texas, North Carolina pretty much in his column effectively. We couldn't have said the same for 2020. Like, Trump would have really not even gone in with Texas or Florida or North Carolina. I could have been smart enough to at least say, okay, Ohio and Iowa are going to be with him. Like, I could have at least deduced that. But with the data we had from Texas, it wouldn't have been enough. Like, it would have basically been in toss-up category. But either way, going into this, he now has Texas, Florida pretty much shored up, and North Carolina now. So his floor is 235. Harris is actually the one now who's underperforming with demographics, and she's the one that's actually, with a lower floor right now, which is kind of funny. But we see there's a lot of competitive states here that originally wouldn't have been competitive. Even back in like 2023, Biden was actually on track to beat Trump in the beginning of 2023, by the way. He was on track to beat him. Biden's favorability was like 5 points higher than Trump. And after the midterms, Trump kind of had a fracture with the GOP, and that really cratered his approval rating. Like, funny enough, guys, I want you to understand something. Trump actually became more unpopular nationally after the midterms than he did on January 6th. Just to let you know. Like, that's a pretty crazy thing to think about, but his approval rating went lower when that happened than when January 6th happened. So it is pretty nuts to see that, but it does kind of have a testament to our politics today that would be the case. Looking at this, Colorado is a state that, kind of has been leaning very Democrat recently. I mean, Obama won it in 2008, 2012, Hillary in 2016, Biden in 2020. And it's been moving to the left. So the chance of it being even really competitive to me is pretty low, to be honest. Like, it's pretty low. However, I do think it's going to be like only a 6 to 7 point win. I don't think it's going to be the 13-point win that most people think it is. I don't think it's going to be such a large win, but I do think it's going to be in her column well enough for you to be able to say, okay, it'll probably go blue. Now, looking at that's basically the only likely state she has in terms of like probability or kind of like a guesstimate. It's like, okay, now, Georgia, I feel very good about Georgia for Trump. I feel really good about Georgia because it has a majority white electorate, and the mail-ins are seemingly more white this year, which is interesting. And the polling, yes, is tied right now in Georgia, but the samples are much bluer than what they were before because they're using the same samples that they used during the midterms. And then now, what the funny part is that since they're oversampling Democrats in Georgia, they're going to have a bigger polling miss than most years or even races per se. And the response bias that Kamala Harris has gotten is even going to make it worse. Even when Joe Biden was in the race, they were still overestimating Joe Biden in the state of Georgia, like they were, because they just didn't have good samples. The electorate there is probably going to be R+5, and you've seen polls with R+1, R+2, or like even Democrat plus favorable samples. Basically means that they're only polling Atlanta and Savannah and like a couple other parts, and that's about it. And that's not how you're supposed to poll the state of Georgia. So based off of everything, looking at my own polling average, looking at everything, I'd say that I feel good about Donald Trump's chances. I feel really good about his chances in Georgia. And that basically puts him at a pretty good spot where he can effectively go in there and just win with, Pennsylvania. This is the most talked about path for the former president, is the 270 electoral college path, where he just wins Pennsylvania and he pretty much calls it a day and he wins, period. And if he really is winning the popular vote by 3.6%, like Atlas Intel is suggesting, and when we added in that poll into our system and basically corrected the aggregate for 2024 to Alice's electorate and did the same thing for 2020, my Biden average for 2020 is actually now Biden plus 5.1, and the shares of the votes went up. So I would have been able to get closer to what their actual vote shares were And on top of that, I would have also been able to get a more accurate spread of the state vote as well. So that's pretty awesome. Not only that, we also have, it's just like if Trump is really doing that well in the popular vote, like 3.6 to 3.8%, you know, from Atlas's range to my range, 3.6 to 3.8. If that's the case, it, Trump is gonna win Georgia and Pennsylvania pretty early on during the night. Like I'm talking about like 11 p.m., 12 p.m., they'll probably call Pennsylvania because it's one of the first states to start counting. And so what will happen is it'll be kind of a weird spot where we know he's going to win the electoral college, but since Alaska probably wouldn't have started counting yet, you have to wait until like 1 a.m. But the only way that could happen, like let's say he's winning the popular vote by 3 and he's doing so well that he even wins New Hampshire. It's very possible that if he wins New Hampshire by like a point or two, they do call it like at 12, and then that will get into 271 or Maine or even one of them. But it is going to be kind of weird because more than likely, if he is winning Pennsylvania, we probably are going to call Wisconsin for him like automatically just to get him over 270, just because usually the Rust Belt always tends to vote together, and Pennsylvania always votes to the left of Wisconsin. And so if Pennsylvania gets called for Trump, we're probably going to automatically call Wisconsin for Trump as well. Michigan will kind of leave it up for grabs depending on how the numbers look. Like if Trump is ahead by like 20 and he's expected to win Pennsylvania by 5 or something like that, or 6, then we'll probably call Michigan too. But if he's up by like 2 or 3, we'll kind of be like, we'll leave it alone. But this is that really common path for him. Another path is Michigan and Nevada. That's another one. That's another path that people have talked about is that 272 path, Michigan, Nevada. But if he's winning Michigan, he's probably winning the rest of the Rust Belt anyway, which that would get him over the finish line regardless. And so, really, I mean, the whole thing almost kind of hinges on the Rust Belt because if Trump is able to get the Rust Belt, he basically deadlocks her out of the presidency because Harris could get New Mexico, could get Minnesota, could get New Hampshire, could get Maine, could get Nebraska second, could get Virginia. She could get all those states. But if Trump wins the Rust Belt, it's basically game over. He can win 2 out of the 3 and win the Electoral College. Arizona could also help him because at that point, he would only need one Rust Belt state to win. If he's winning Arizona, it's going to be kind of hard for Harris to win, actually. And if Trump is winning Pennsylvania, I mean, the thing with Pennsylvania is that once he's there, he's at 254, and Harris's paths become a lot harder. She'd have to win Georgia, which wouldn't make sense because Pennsylvania and Georgia both have large African American metros. And if Trump's winning Pennsylvania, he's probably winning Georgia. So not only would she have to win Georgia, she probably would have to win Michigan at this point and pick off in Arizona. And then at that point, have to pick off a Wisconsin or would have to pick off a Nevada. That would be the problem. Now, the thing is, if Trump is winning Texas by double digits and New Mexico is under 5, Trump's not going to win Arizona. He's just not going to. And so that is the problem. That's the big, big problem for Kamala Harris. Her paths are very, very limited, and her campaign seems to be set on this one path that I don't think is very confident for them. And it is the 270 path, where basically they're putting all bets on Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and that's it. And I don't think that's going to be good for them. I don't think that's a confident path. That doesn't exude confidence. It's kind of like Donald Trump, where like back then in 2020, you could have put Colorado, New Mexico in the safe Democrat column. You could have put Minnesota for Biden automatically, New Hampshire, Virginia, Maine. Like you could have in 2020, you could have done this. And like Texas, like you could have like put him here, and then not like Iowa and Ohio, like could have been likely. Maybe like Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine could have been like likely, probably. But like this would have been the battleground map for last time, effectively. This would have kind of been a similar map, essentially. And so it's kind of like how back then Trump would have needed Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, and Nebraska second. Like that's the only path he had, really. It's almost the same thing, guys. Harris really only has that one path because she's doing so bad with Hispanic and African American voters and some of the polling data that she's basically going to be a DOA more than likely in some of these Sunbelt states, probably in Nevada, the same thing. I mean, there's a reason why she copied Trump's no tax on tips because her internals are really bad in the state. And so when you look at it, she's got that one viable path to 270, and it's literally the Rust Belt. That's it. It's just 270, and that's not a good path to have. Any little crack there, no matter what state it is, Trump becomes the next president. He doesn't have to win all three. So again, very interesting stuff. But that again, that's the only path that Kamala Harris has. And I've also modeled out, what are the likeliness of Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania going blue, but Wisconsin, Georgia, Nevada going red. That is kind of a scenario people have talked about her as the path. But according to my simulation model, it literally has less than a 1% chance of happening. I think it literally it doesn't it literally barely even happens. I think there's like 2 simulations out of the 1,000 where that happens. Like, it's very unlikely that Trump is winning Wisconsin, Georgia, and Nevada, but losing Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona. It's very unlikely that that actually happens. I'm telling you, it's very unlikely. And whoever has that map is going to be putting a pretty dangerous bet, because according to my simulations, that's not even possible. More than likely, if that were to happen, she probably would take Nevada with her. The 277 result was more common. This was a more common result in my model. This is what was actually happening. And it makes sense because Arizona and Nevada have similar demographics. So if Arizona's going, Nevada probably does go, and Nevada is probably voting to the right of Arizona now. So if Arizona is going red, Nevada's probably going to go red too. You even saw that in 2022. It was already voting to the right of Arizona. And so this is another path that they talked about. But again, it's like, yeah, if Trump's winning Wisconsin, his likeliness of winning Pennsylvania is probably pretty high, in my opinion, including Michigan, which already puts him at 295. And the Rust Belt states have all voted together since 1992. So it's like, that the Georgia and Pennsylvania are really key states, because if he wins both of those, he's got it. He's the president. I mean, he's got them. If he wins both of those, even if he's just winning Georgia with his 2020 states, he's already about to win the election, basically. He would barely be away of winning. So if you guys did enjoy this electoral analysis, make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.